Meditation and Spiritual Life, Swami Yatiswarananda. Warnings to the unmarried. Sri Ramakrishna always used to warn all his disciples, mostly young men, against the snares of Kamini Kanchana, woman in gold. But he used to tell the woman who came to him for instruction, beware of the snares of a man, even if he is a very near relative. One cannot attain anything in spiritual life without perfect chastity in thought, word, deed. The extent of real chastity attained determines the whole progress of the aspirant. Everyone should be on his guard with every person of the other sex. Real chastity means infinitely more than the mere avoidance of sexual intercourse. All married persons, all unmarried persons, no matter who they are, should avoid the company of persons of the other sex, men and women, and should always consciously think thoughts which are opposed to the idea of sex. Especially in the beginning of spiritual life, the sex instinct grows in strength in many people. When we water and manure the soil nicely, the weeds too will grow nicely along with the plants we originally wish to grow. We have to uproot these weeds when they rear their heads, otherwise, they will smother the good plants. This means we must be extremely careful regarding the company we allow ourselves to be in for the first few years of our striving. Never believe yourself to be so strong as to be above listening to such advice. Avoid spending time in the company of persons of the other sex, no matter how pure they may be, before you have attained real sublimation, culminating in the transformation of your whole being. Concentration influences your sexual imagination also. It's like the example just now given. You water and fertilize the soil, weeds will grow. So if you are developing in power of concentration, your sexual imagination, sexualizing things, that will also become stronger and makes even the apparently harmless pictures more vivid and living, and apparently harmless emotions very strong passions. The arousal of sex need not be in any gross way at all. In the beginning, subtle attractions, subtle forms of stimulation are worse than gross forms, because for the beginner, gross desire and manifestation is very easily recognizable, because for the beginner, the former, the subtle ones, are not as easily recognizable as the latter. Many a time I have found great carelessness in aspirants with regard to these points, and many have come to grief because of that. Swami Vivekananda used to also say, this kirtan, this ecstasy in singing and dancing, raises the mental consciousness to a very high plane, in the region of the heart, in the region of the throat, and even higher planes. Definitely, instantly your mind gets elevated with tremendous power, because the power of emotion, imagination are very strong. But if the aspirant is basically not very pure, that momentary thing, once it ends, once the kirtan ends, it rushes downwards and leads to strong carnal desires. That's why Swamiji has clearly mentioned that for the beginners, It should be a mix of jnana, bhakti, karma, and yoga, and everything in moderation. So he advised us aspirants to rather sing those kind of music, especially Drupad, which is very strong, and not especially the Kirtananga. He forbade it, the beginner aspirant, because without guidance, without support, if you simply engage in such things, it's his observation and it's a fact also that the life becomes much more immoral if not protected, if not guided. There is a funny story which very aptly illustrates the effects of carelessness regarding our choice of company. Once a camel just pushed its nose through the door of an Arab's tent. The Arab first objected to this, but the camel said, "Oh, I'm only just putting my nose into a room for a moment, nothing more." But in fact, it slowly pushed its ugly head and then its whole body through the door, and when the owner objected to its presence in his room, it said, "If you don't like my presence in your house, you had better get out. But I'll not." Lust sometimes comes in some such way, in the form of duty, in the form of compassion, in the form of service. Our mind is always out to deceive us about its true motive. Without chastity in thought, word, and deed, nothing can be achieved in spiritual life. You can be moral, ethical, but spiritual life is not to be equated with ethical life, you see. Spiritual life is transcending the body and the mind. The subconscious or unconscious mind always wants to do harm to us, and it patiently waits for an opportunity to do so effectively. What harm? Harm the spiritual growth in us, because it wants to enjoy the worldly things, the material things. It has been trained like that. So you should give it a good scolding now and then, drive into it powerful suggestions, and keep it under control. After all, it is you who are the master, not the mind. Do not allow the camel to come in. If you do, you'll have great difficulty driving it out again.